Turning now to new details in the JonBenét Ramsey case. You may recall this was a very sensational case and it involved 6-year-old JonBenét Ramsey, and it captured the nation's attention 25 years ago. The 6-year-old was the daughter of an affluent family in Boulder, Colorado, and was a child beauty queen. Well, now, a quarter-century after Ramsey was found bludgeoned and strangled to death in her family's home, police say they're looking into DNA testing to see if today's technology can help identify her killer. In a statement released on Monday, the Boulder police addressed the 25th anniversary of JonBenét's death, saying, as the department continues to use new technology to enhance the investigation, it is actively reviewing genetic DNA testing processes to see if those can be applied to this case moving forward. As we've seen in recent years, DNA testing has been used by investigators in a number of unsolved cases to help identify new suspects and new leads in cold cases. As far as this case goes, here's what we know so far. Investigators have analyzed nearly 1,000 DNA samples during the course of the investigation. They've received, reviewed, or investigated more than 21,016 tips, letters, and emails. The detectives have traveled to 19 states to interview or speak with more than 1,000 people in connection with the case. And the DNA testing done in 2008 on JonBenét's clothing pointed to the involvement of a quote-unquote unexplained third party. Always my honor to bring in a special guest to help us break all this down. Now joining me from Monroe, North Carolina, forensic criminologist Dr. Laura Pettler. Dr. Pettler, you and I have worked together on a number of cold cases. First question, yes, right out of the chutes, and I remember this was a huge case 25 years ago, and the national media, nationwide, worldwide, that it brought. Based on your experience, are you surprised that this case has not been solved 25 years later?
Yes, it is surprising because there was a lot of evidence in the case, I think, from the very beginning. So it's definitely unusual that a case like this hasn't been solved.
Tell me about what it means when they say they're going to use DNA, 25 years ago, what they might have done with DNA evidence versus where we are today. What does that look like from your expertise as a forensic criminologist?
So it's really interesting, Ashley, because back in the 90s, when DNA first kind of became a thing for law enforcement to use within the criminal justice purpose, it was very, very rudimentary compared to what we have today. Now, as the years have gone on, and I've worked, in homicide 20 years, I've seen this drastic increase in technology and the advancement of procedures, not only the procedures, but the sensitivity of the testing, and then also the types of DNA that can be tested. First, it was like blood and very robust samples. Now it's all the way down to cells and hair and small samples. And recently they even started testing DNA from the air of it. So it has evolved tremendously. And for cold case work, combined with the forensic genealogy that's now available, it lends hope to hundreds of thousands of cold cases worldwide.
And Laura, while they have been talking about this being the 25th anniversary of this murder, and it was ruled a homicide, we do know that, there also has been discussion about the fact that the crime scene initially, the handling of this case by the police, may have been a little different. Boulder, Colorado is a smaller community. It's not a huge metro city. The amount of media attention, she was a beauty queen, and there'd been no prior case that really spotlighted children being in beauty pageants. And this had that element to it. And then the different fact patterns, and that the mother called 911 to say our child's missing, only to find her a few hours later in the house, brutally murdered. Do you think all of those different pieces affected the type of investigation that was done 25 years ago when this first happened?
Absolutely. And as a person who specializes in solving and assisting in prosecuting cold case homicides, sometimes cases when they are investigating initially in the initial original investigation, sometimes things that are done in those instances play a role later in the prosecutability of a case. And we might have that situation going on here where even if they solve the case, that doesn't mean that it's legally prosecutable. A team of prosecutors has to assess that situation to see if everything that was done 25 years ago in the scene and everything that was collected and things like that make the case not only factually strong, but legally strong from the standpoint that it can be prosecuted. Not every case can.
And also, in this case, we know that it's been considered an open, active investigation, according to law enforcement, really for the last 25 years. And often in cold cases that I've participated in, yes, I do see that it's open and active, but it doesn't mean it's being actively worked just because of limited resources and a number of other crimes, unfortunately, that get committed. In this case, what do you think when you hear of all the numbers that we just talked about, the 1,000 people having been interviewed, 19 states being visited, 21,000 tips, I think was the number. What does that say to you about this case and the reality of it being solved?
I think that, it's very important to do a thorough job and interview everybody that you can. But I also think that the ransom letter and the ransom note is the best piece of evidence case. And it lends a tremendous amount of information and psychological information about who may be involved with this death of the murder of this young girl. And I think that sometimes law enforcement, not with their intention, but they do end up going and chasing leads that don't result in fruition. And it sounds like they have done that. But what I really want to compliment them on is the fact that when they do get a lead, follow up on it. And so many cases that come into us, we get these lead sheets that nobody ever followed up on in a cold case. So we thought immediately to follow up on all those old leads that nobody ever checked on. So I'm glad they're doing that. But I think that the evidence in the case can be boiled down, Ashley. I think that it can be separated into critical evidence and white noise. And like you said, there's so many fact patterns. There were so many things that were suggested. I think that there's a tremendous amount of white noise going on here. And that white noise needs to be sequestered, and the focus needs to be on what the critical evidence is in this case to get it solved, possibly to get it prosecuted.
So I know you talked just now about the critical evidence. You'd already mentioned, we know the DNA retesting, of course, critical evidence. You mentioned the ransom note, the ransom letter. What else is critical evidence, in your opinion, that they really need to focus on?
I think also the elements were used from the house itself, like the paintbrush handle and other pieces that were physically there in the house, like the undigested pineapple and milk in Johnny's stomach. There's a lot of things that sequence the events in this case. And quite honestly, in my opinion, it's not a difficult case to solve and to prosecute if it did not have all of these other twists and turns where, like I mentioned, the beauty queen aspect, if you take all of that out, the prominent family, Boulder not having a lot of homicides, and you just look at the actual critical evidence in this case, and you compare it to several others like it that are solved, this case was a solvable case from the beginning.
And we know the autopsy report, that is where I know you've learned some of those details about the use of a paintbrush, the undigested pineapple, some of those pieces. So the autopsy report clearly can give. And again, it did find homicide was how she passed away, that she was killed, rather. That's a better description. Let's, in the last minute that we have together, I believe firmly in education is prevention. How does this happen? What can be done in your experience to prevent something as atrocious as this from happening again moving forward?
I think from the law enforcement standpoint, the response, we all need to continue education in teaching people to recognize red flags of staging behavioral patterns, if that's indeed what's going on. When every death case is treated like a homicide until otherwise, proven, then, and we use these metrics that we have now available to law enforcement for staging at the very beginning to determine whether or not to proceed in that direction or not, it can help prevent cold cases. And that's really a takeaway from this case, that it is featured in my book of staged cases. And so there's here that are consistent with that. And I think that we continue to push for awareness of staging behavior and what it looks like, what it doesn't look like, and what do we do about it if we suspect it.
All right. Laura Petler, thank you so much. I always appreciate your
Welcome. Thank you,
expertise
Ashley.
as a forensic criminologist. Appreciate having you on for this case.